A man, in order to pass his interview at the space agency, took a bag of someone else's urine out of the fridge and tied it to his thigh. Then he injected a fake fingerprint film with a drop of someone else's blood and carefully applied glue to his index finger. Because in the future world, only genetically perfect people will get good jobs. Any company that hires doesn't look at education and experience. It's a blood and urine test for genes. Vince was born with a genetic defect. He was born with a genetic defect and was destined to live at the bottom of the social ladder. But by chance, he utilized his mastery of counterfeiting. He succeeded in obtaining the genes of a perfect man. From then on, he became a brilliant astronaut. This 1997 movie is one of the best sci-fi movies in my mind. One of the best sci-fi movies I've ever seen. In the future, mankind has achieved eugenics. Vincent is an ordinary man who was conceived by natural means. At the moment of his birth, doctors have detected through his blood he's likely to have a heart condition in the future, and he won't live long. After hearing the doctor's conclusion, his father changed his face, but his mother was still full of hope for Vincent. However, as Vincent grew up, all kinds of strange illnesses continued. A small fall almost took him away. The parents reconsidered. They decided to use the latest genetic technology to have another child. They selected the best genes. They even customized his personality and looks. Sure enough, good genes are an advantage. The younger brother surpassed Vincent in every aspect, and so did his parents' love. Even though Vince was unhappy, but he couldn't change the cruel reality. In order to prove himself, Vince swam against his brother many times, and he never won. There was a genetic gap that Vince would never be able to overcome. Without love and care, Vince was disgusted with the world. He began to study hard. He dreamed of becoming an astronaut, so he could escape from reality. In the face of his son's wild ideas, his mother told him to get real. His father was even more cruel in telling him, "You're genetically incapable of taking to the skies." The space agency was a place where perfect people worked. But young Vince wouldn't listen, and then reality hit him hard. No matter how much he bragged about it on his resume, he was handed a urine test cup at the interview. The company only recognized genes, not education or experience. The search for a job went on and on. Vince was sick and tired of a genetically discriminatory society. He asked his brother to swim in a race one last time, but this time, the results were different. No matter how hard his brother tried, he couldn't catch up with Vince, until he ran out of energy. Seeing that his brother was about to sink to the bottom of the sea, Vince immediately went back. This time, he won the race. He realized that he was not as weak as he thought. If he worked hard enough, he would be able to break free from his genes. From this moment on, Vincent decided to pursue his dream. Back home, he tore off his own head in the family photo. He left the house without a word. Through his hard work, he finally made it to the space agency of his dreams. Although he was only a good janitor, but here he was closer to his dream. When no one was around, he would quietly sit on the workbench and fantasize that he had become an astronaut. At night, when he returned to his apartment, Vince would work out to astronaut standards until he was exhausted. But he knew better than anyone. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't change his genes to become a real astronaut. Good genes are the most important criterion. Thinking about it, Vince decided to take a gamble. He found a black marketer who specializes in selling identities. In this world, there are always some geniuses who are unlucky. They will take their genetic identity to the black market to trade, and Gerald was one of them. He used to be a good swimmer. His genes were the best of the best, but he only won a silver medal in a competition. He couldn't accept this imperfection and attempted suicide, but the attempt left him with a permanent disability. In return, Vince had to take care of Gerard's living expenses. Everything was agreed upon. Vince began to modify his appearance. First, he put in contact lenses, then he straightened his teeth, and he had to get the same haircut. Because of the height difference between them, Vince ignored all the pain. He had a bone-breaking surgery to increase his height. In the face of this strong conviction of the cruel man, Jerome was very puzzled. He asked Vincent, "Why are you so confident? My genes are perfect. Even when I was at my peak, I didn't win the gold medal." But Vincent said he wasn't sure. "But if he didn't try hard, I'll never make it in this life." After some remodeling, there's almost no difference between the two. In order to be sure, in the following days, Vince began to imitate Gerard's habits. He was uncomfortable at first with his left hand. Through days of hard work, finally, he was able to write in the same handwriting as Jero. On the day of the interview, Vince took out the diaper bag that Jerome had prepared for him. He tied it securely to his inner thigh. Then he injected a drop of someone else's blood into the fake fingerprint film and carefully glued it to his index finger. The two of them worked perfectly together. With their excellent genes, Vince succeeded in entering the space agency. In order to prevent his real genes from being exposed, he had to clean his keyboard at all times and then sprinkle samples of Gerald's substance. Even the comb had to have some of Jero's hair on it. It was no surprise that Vince was about to take mankind's dream into space. But then it all came to a head. On that day, The supervisor died in his office. The police soon became involved. When Vincent left the scene, Vince accidentally left an eyelash behind. This will bring him great trouble. In order to find the murderer, cleaned up the entire office area, and his eyelash was found. After genetic analysis in the lab, it was found that this belongs to a defective person. Vince's profile also appeared on the screen. The police officer in charge of the case happened to be his brother. He was amazed at the photo on the screen, because according to his brother's genetic condition, there's no way his brother could have gotten into the space agency. After investigation, Vince used to work here as a janitor. He disappeared soon after. It's obvious that Vince is a big suspect. Then the brother asked the company's management for information. He even took out a photo of Vincent from before. Luckily, they didn't recognize him. At this time, Vincent was unaware of his situation. He was still working out on the treadmill. Hearing that his brother was suspicious of him, Vincent felt bad. To prevent exposure of identity, drinking water, he rushed out of here. Maybe he was too nervous. Before leaving, Vincent handed the cleaner the paper cup he was drinking from, but he didn't realize that this little cup would cause him a lot of trouble. When he arrived at the launch site, Vince ran into Lisa, one of his co-workers. The two of them had a mutual liking for each other. During the conversation, Lisa is also a genetically modified person, but her heart was never very good. It seems that even genetically engineered people have imperfections. At this moment, Vincent no longer felt inferior. They arranged to meet in the woods at night. However, at that moment, the police issued a wanted notice, even if it's just a photo from the past. He was devastated. When they got home, Vince confessed to Jerome that he couldn't act anymore. He dumped all the samples. Jerome was furious, and he gave Vince a hard time. It's been a long journey. You shouldn't back down when things get tough. Vince was instantly awakened, and he washed his body like a madman, and never let himself make the same mistake again. He was well prepared. He resumed his life in disguise. In the evening, he met his colleague, Lisa, but on their way back, they accidentally encountered the police spot check. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, Vincent threw away his contact lenses. Seeing that the other party was going to take a saliva sample, the clever Vincent lied that he had just kissed his girlfriend. The saliva sample may not be accurate. The police had no choice but to switch to a blood test. The preparation he had done in advance had worked. Eventually, the device successfully revealed Gerald's identity, but without his contact lenses, the highly nearsighted Vincent was like a blind man. In order not to arouse Lisa's suspicion, he risked his life to cross the busy road. But the crisis had just ended. There was more bad news from the space agency. The police happened to take the paper cup that Vincent had been drinking from. His true form was revealed once again. By now, the younger brother was convinced that his brother was hiding at the space agency. All the janitors were checked. The only conclusion was that Vince had stolen his genes to become a risky astronaut. So the brother went to the space station. He demanded that everyone have their blood tested for genetics. Soon it was Vince's turn. He was prepared for this. When the doctor started to draw blood, he was already holding Gerald's blood in his hand. The blood was about to be drawn. Vince suddenly screamed and got up. He yelled at the doctor for making a mistake and switched the blood. In the eyes of the police, Vince escaped again. After checking everyone, the police found nothing. They proposed another test, but the director was strongly against it. The launch window for the ship is in 2 days. This opportunity only comes around once every 70 years. The director's attitude immediately aroused the police's suspicion. At that moment, Vince had let his guard down and was on a date with Lisa. While the two of them were having a great time, they were attacked by the police again. Vince saw a bad opportunity. He immediately took his girlfriend and escaped through the back door. But unfortunately, the place was already guarded. At this moment, Vince could no longer suppress his anger. He threw his fists at the policeman at the door, even when his girlfriend tried to stop him. The fists never stopped, until he fell to the ground and died. After finishing, he grabbed his girlfriend and quickly fled, and managed to hide in the dark. At this point, her girlfriend had already guessed. Vince was carrying a big secret. His brother, who had arrived too late, could only roar in frustration and impotence. Back at the police station, the brother carefully compared the photos of Vincent and Gerard. He seemed to realize something, so the next day, he started investigating Jerome. Luckily, Lisa found out about the address. Lisa immediately sent Vincent home to pretend to be sick, and when her brother came looking for him, Lisa lied about Vince being homesick today, to find out the truth. The brother asked Lisa to take him there, but there was no time to lose. Vince had to call Jerome and tell him to be himself today. At that moment, Jerome was on the first floor. He took a giant step forward. He's now scrambling to get to the first floor. Disabled as he is, he's using his arms to climb the stairs. He's using his hands to get his ass up on the stool. Then he puts his unconscious leg into a stance. And then he puts his clothes back together. He took out his handkerchief and wiped the sweat from his head. Just after all this, the police came in. In order to hide his real identity, Jerome greeted Lisa familiarly. Looking at everything in front of her, Lisa also realized, this is the identity that Vincent has been stealing. She immediately went along with the act, but the police were still not satisfied. satisfied. They wanted to take a blood test on site. The results were unquestionable. The man in front of us is the brilliant astronaut. The brother was still not satisfied with the result. He wanted to go downstairs to look for clues. Vince was hiding here at that moment. At this critical moment, a co-worker called, claiming that the murderer had been caught. Vincent breathed a sigh of relief. After his brother left, Vince came out slowly. He told Lisa the truth. She was the only person Vince didn't want to lie to. Back at the police station, his brother met the real killer. He didn't realize that the murderer was the director of aerospace. It turns out that his colleagues were against his launch plan. The director's lifelong dream was to see a rocket go up in his lifetime. In order to fulfill his dream, he killed his colleague. At night, Vincent came to his office. He found his brother waiting for him. After all these years, the younger brother felt that his brother's genes didn't deserve to be here. It's a life he stole, and the older brother has worked so hard to prove that he, the flawed man, was no worse than the perfect man, even more successful than most perfect people. The two brothers had a big fight, and they decided that a contest of courage between them would decide the winner. They went to the beach. The sea was rough. Both of them swam hard into the sea. Vince was clearly stronger now, in the face of absolute strength. Good genes are worthless. It didn't take long. My brother could not hold on much longer. Seeing his brother about to sink to the bottom of the sea, Vince saved him again. Ironically, however, the reason his parents had him in the first place was to take care of his frail brother. When Vincent returned home, he found that all the furniture had been secured, and that's when Gerald slowly came out. He had enough samples for 2 lifetimes. Jerome said he was getting ready to go on a trip. He gave him a letter. He told him not to open it until he was in the sky. Soon the day of Vince's liftoff and launch arrived. Just as he was about to step into the spacecraft, the company suddenly came up with a new rule. All pilots were required to take a urine test. Unprepared, Vince didn't want to pretend anymore. He took the plunge and handed the doctor his own cup of urine. Unsurprisingly, his true identity appeared on the screen. The doctor was not surprised. Then he changed the results of the test. It turned out that he knew about Vincent's disguise, but he never told him, because he saw in him a man who worked hard for his dream. Finally, Vincent got his wish and boarded the rocket. At home, Jero climbed into the incinerator with the silver medal that he was ashamed of, because only by leaving, he was the only one who could protect the man who had restored his honor. At the same moment the ship ignited. Jerome pressed the incinerator button. His body slowly disappeared, and the silver medal on his chest appeared golden in the light of the fire. At that moment, maybe he got his own gold medal. On the distant ship, Vince opened the envelope as promised. Inside was a strand of Gerald's hair. He would accompany Vince in another way to fulfill his dream.